Reeling from the war fire, someone come and inspire. We've got the author, it's Dan. Come on, Dan Abnett. Come on, Dan Abnett. Come on and tell us of the ghosts.
Okay, hello, welcome everybody back to my channel, and of course I'm delighted to introduce everybody's favourite, Dan Abnett. Hi Dan.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, lovely to have you back, and as you know, I have been spending, well, most of the bank holiday weekend with first and only Ghostmaker and Necropolis,
Wow.
the Gaunt Ghosts.
What a bank holiday.
I know, right? And I think you have to excuse my toilet paper bookmarkers, but that's just how things go in this house. I was told that I've got some really, this is a really old school cover.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah. So so First and Only was your first published novel, is that right?
That is correct, actually. Yes. I had, I think, written 2 novels before that for myself to see if I could do it, which have never been published. Just to see what happens and to see if I could sustain long form. And really by that stage, you've got to bear in mind at that point in my career, I've been working in comics for about 10 years. I was gainfully employed and I couldn't really take the time off to you know, several months at least to write a novel on spec for someone, even though I really wanted to write a novel. And when I started working I was hired by Games Workshop to write comics for Warhammer Monthly. And they said, do you want to write short stories? And I went, great, yes, done a bit of that. That's fantastic. And then they finally said, would you like to write a novel? And I went, great, somebody's now going to commission me to write a novel. So it's not like I had to take time off to do it. So hence First and Only, which, yes, was my first published novel and was one of the first in the sort of, as it were, modern era of Black Library novels. So it was, yes, yeah.
It was a trailblazer. And how old are you at this time? Can I ask age? That's 1999, I think, right?
1999. That would make me in my. That would make me 34. 34.
Okay. So you've lived a little, but the responsibility. Let's talk a little bit about Gaunt, because Gaunt and his ghosts are now 16 books strong, I think.
They are, yes, at least, because there's also peripheral Sabbath Worlds novels that are set in the same campaign. So that actually, if you wanted to read all of them, there's a colossal amount.
Oh, God. Here we go. But so you're kind of asked to write this novel. The Sabbath Worlds is the Gaunt universe, as far as I understand. That's what all the adventures had. What's that responsibility like? I mean, yes, you've done comics before. And how much did they serve up to you on a plate? How much did you know would happen about the setting and the characters?
Oh, virtually nothing at all. So yeah, really, it was all invented a little bit like Eisenhorn, really, on the fly. So
yes, this is what I wanted to hear about, because
so yeah, that is exactly it. It was all, a lot of it is improvisation and then development from that improvisation, which is why I've stuck to the series for so long, because I like the fact that it just keeps evolving and I think, oh, I could do that, and so I go and do it. So no, so you've read the novels in the right order, but Ghostmaker, which is the second novel, is made up of sort of individual stories about characters before it builds to a novella at the end. And what I'd actually did, as I say, the first thing that got me writing at Black Library was comic strips and short stories. And one of the first short stories, prose stories I wrote, was the first Gaunt's Ghost story, which was a sort of, I don't know, probably about maybe 5,000 word story. It wasn't long.
Yeah.
Where I just invented the characters. I thought, I'll do a story about an infantry group. I understood the what we called then the Imperial Guard, which is now known as the Astra Militarum. I thought, I'll do something about those. Simple, basically a war story, sort of a platoon of characters, a bit of action. So I made it up as I went along, created it, and that was the first story. We ended up doing 3, if not 4, short stories about Gaunt. And at that point they said, would you like to write a novel? And they said, we really like the Gaunt's Ghosts short stories. They seem to be characters that would translate well into a novel. So what I then did was write the First and Only, which is the original novel, as it were. It's a brand new, completely new. Ghostmaker then takes the short stories that I wrote in Inferno I rewrote them considerably and expanded them and made them the first few chapters, and then added some for the other characters, and then developed it. So Ghostmaker is what they call a fix-up, which takes the existing material and puts it together and turns it into a novel. So the first and third are completely original. Parts of the second novel had appeared before. So yes, obviously the Imperial Guard existed. I had the Codex. I talked to people about it. I chose Imperial Guard because they are humans, or as close to us as we can get. At that point, I was very, very shy about writing Space Marine characters, because although they were the kind of iconic poster boys of the universe,
right,
I didn't know what I was going to do with those, or I felt I couldn't really approach them because they are quite difficult to write, because they are essentially sort of very emotionless. They lack an awful lot of humanity. And they are also very, very alike. They're sort of literally mass produced to be Space Marines. Right. And I thought they would be daunting central characters for a novel, which is why I came to them much later and introduced them in different ways in my work. So I wanted the human grunts, because I thought they'll have proper emotional ranges. They can be very varied in their characters and personalities. They have proper basic human needs and desires and all that kind of stuff. Those are the guys I want to write about. And that's what I did. So yes, that I remember the sort of just the scope of sitting down to write first only and having a rough idea of the plot and going, this is amazing. I've got all this space to play with. What am I going to do? And that's what I did.
Well, I mean, that you've foreseen one of my questions, because I was thinking, this is so different from writing about your Primarchs or your Space Marine.
Yeah.
So I love that you wanted to hone in on the human aspect, because one of the things you're damn good at is those emotions and getting into the heads of humans. So that really makes sense. And thank you for telling us about how all that came together. I love that you call this tremendous book a fix-up or whatever, because
that is actually the technical publishing term for it. But yes, that is what it's known as. Yes.
Yeah.
And that focus on the human characters was just a gut response to what was at the time an overwhelming amount of source material that I had to wade through. I just thought I'll keep it really simple, and I'll almost keep the action really simple. That is, it's about people in trenches. It's about, it's the smallest possible scale I could get. And even there, as happened a great deal more with the Eisenhorn books shortly afterwards, I was writing these things and going, there isn't a word for this thing. Now I'm writing prose. No one's ever invented a word for this thing. So, for instance, words like Voxcaster and things like that came out of a need to be able to talk about radios and stuff like that. So that coinage of vocabulary for the universe started there in those stories.
Yeah, which is great, because then you'll then pick that up in other stories.
Oh yes,
Warhammer universe and outside the Warhammer universe.
Yeah,
and use that, which is beautiful. But you mentioned that you bought these short stories across. It sounds like Gaunt came almost fully formed to you.
Yeah.
Tell me about Dan and Gaunt. Tell me.
Well, okay. Again, it was. I had that. Bearing in mind, at that point in my career, I had no idea that I'd end up writing for Black Library for so long, and I would end up exploring the universe and contributing to the universe to the level that I have done. So I was dealing with very simple, almost tropes, sort of archetypes, and I thought, well. We want the heroic officer and his trustworthy men. People have said that I modelled it on Sharp, and I have talked about the Sharp and the Sharp's books several times in interviews, only as a parallel, because it was like, yes, let's do this. The idea of an infantry regiment, which is pretty good at what it does, and therefore gets used a lot, but gets no recognition and is sort of squandered, and they do all the struggling and the suffering.
Yeah.
That old the story as old as time that's been told about every war possible. And I like the idea that Gaunt was a discipline officer. He was a commissar as well. That whole idea of the commissar colonel is something that I invented, and everybody went, "Can you do that?" And I went, "Well, I just did." So there you go. The idea that he's very noble and true and heroic and not above sort of messing in and getting involved in the action as well, and that also, because of the circumstances, is sort of, to begin with, at odds with his men, who have to be loyal and follow him, but at the same time they blame him hugely for the fate that has befallen them.
Yeah,
and that he has to win them over. It is so, but I kept it very simple. So there's sort of the cowardly sniper who's a really good shot. There's the incredibly genial, reliable colonel who stands by him. There's the dangerous captain who wants to stab him in the back out of vengeance. There's the naive young boy. There's the, each one of them was, I suppose, I looked at all the war films I'd ever loved and go, well, there's always one like that and there's one like that. Let's have these characters. And of course, once we got to the novels, that basic range of characters expanded and so many characters got added. But it was, they started out as very simple characters who fulfilled a sort of classic role in a war story. And one of the pleasures that I've taken from the series as it's gone on into 16 plus books is the way those characters have evolved, those that have survived, that they have evolved and grown. Gaunt is a much more complicated, complex character in the most recent books than he ever was back then. It's not that I've changed him, that we've just learned more about him and things have happened and we've seen different aspects to him and that kind of stuff. So they all they're all basically seeds at that point. I recently had to write sorry, I'm digressing, but I recently had to write I was asked to write a novel, a sort of a new Gaunt novella called The Vincular Insurgency, which is sort of a book that runs parallel to the main series of books because it's set back in the past. It's set shortly after those early novels, and it was an opportunity to go back and revisit some of the characters that are no longer with us and all this kind of stuff. And when I went back, obviously, I looked at the early novels and I went, "Oh my God, these seem to me now, given what I do with the books and the way I approach them, God, these seem." They're not bad books, but they seem sort of thin that I was going, oh my God, did I think that was going to be enough? And of course I did at the time because I'd never written one before. So it was enough. This was more than nothing. And I had nothing before that. And I now look back at it and writing again in that time period of the story going, I need an awful lot more sophistication and complexity. And so there is that. And I think in those early books, it's really Necropolis. I think first and only, and I think Ghostmaker's fine because it tells you a lot about the characters. First and Only is a perfectly good novel, particularly for a first one. But Necropolis is really the one where I feel like, right, now I've got a handle on what I'm doing with these characters and what these books should be about, where there's that complexity. So but they start off, I won't say ciphers, but they start off as very simple versions of who they become.
I mean, I received that. A lot of people have said to me, firstly, everyone, Necropolis changed my life. It's my favorite. And I was like, this is the most bloodthirsty one. But a lot of people have said, Mira, you're going to love these books, but wait until you get in. And I guess it's that bone broth effect, right? So you built the structure and then you're adding this richness to the mix. And
absolutely.
Now a beautiful party soup that everyone wants.
And absolutely, and I think when they say wait till you get in, is I think I always think of Gaunt's Ghost more than anything else I've ever done, including comics, as a soap opera. It might be a soap opera with huge battles, but it's about the characters, and therefore, like any good soap opera, an individual episode, you go, oh, that's perfectly enjoyable. I might watch it again tomorrow. You watch it tomorrow, and after about a month of doing that, you're going, I must watch tonight's episode because you want to know what happens to the next. And given the nature of the Warhammer universe, what happens to the next is often terrible. People have told me that they're sitting there waiting to read the next book going, I barely dare turn the next page because I don't want something to happen to my favorite cast. Because bear in mind also that in this arc and then in the following arcs of the novels, so many more important characters get added. I mean, the cast grows and grows and grows. It is now a cast of hundreds of main characters, and some of those each one of them's got their own little sort of fan base of we love this particular person. The same goes for because you mentioned it earlier on. The same goes for the Sabbath World itself, because I invented the Sabbath World. It was a kind of Clone Wars moment where I just said a thing. Oh, these fights are taking place in the Sabbath World. And people said, "What's that?" And I went, "Oh, it's a part of the Imperium somewhere." And I went, "Fine, carry on. The Imperium's really big. That can be your corner of it." And the Sabbath Worlds themselves, as a location, has developed until it is now a recognised part on the map. And I've written a companion book to it and all this kind of stuff. So it is now integrated into the universe. But at the beginning, the Sabbath Worlds, 2 words, just like the Clone Wars and the original Star Wars movie, was just a thing that people said, that a character said, that gave you a sense of colour that you went, oh, what's that then?
Oh, this is truly the magic. I'm so glad you've got your own Sabbath Worlds now. That's pretty awesome. I mean, I thought, even though you think it's thin, I really loved Gaunt. I mean, tragic lost father, kill his own uncle, and then kind of has a pseudo father, Oktar, who believes in him, and then becomes father in a way to Milo and the ghosts. Like, see, it is quite rich already, Dan. I
I suppose it is, and I'm thinking about that for the First and Only, the fact that actually the First and Only structurally is quite sophisticated for a first book, because it hops about in time, and each bit there are irregular flashbacks telling you more and more about what the main story is doing. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't shirking. That was as good as I could make it then. But now I'm looking back and going, God, I'd love to rewrite that. You know what? I'm not going to, not ever going to, but I'm going, I'd love to rewrite that and just put more into it, because there's so much more you could do with those characters. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the premise where you started with a lost world, so you know, you're starting where, if we're talking Star Wars, where Princess Leia sees her whole world blown up and everything, and then you have this regiment, and it was quite interesting because I did a couple of videos, and I will ask you this question. I did a couple of videos to come to decompress, because when you're in the book and you're like, you know, you're under the fire. You know, I was saying, like, you know, what do you, I mean, I was going to save this question for later, but when you've been writing these particularly intense scenes, I kind of dipped out and I read Guards by Terry for some silliness. And thank God there is some beautiful Blackadder moments in your books as well. So if you put the blood, sweat and tears in, you do get those light moments, which are brilliant. But how do you kind of decompress? Or so you're writing these very intense moments. Are you then able to go off and like have a lovely dinner, or, you know, or do you need to decompress? Is there an on and off switch? How does that work for you mechanically, I guess, as a writer?
I think back then I couldn't decompress as well as I can do now. These days, even though I'm even more emotionally attached to what I'm doing, I'm very good at going, yeah, that's enough for today. I'm just going to walk away and watch some crap television and eat some dinner, or have a conversation, or play a game, or whatever it's going to be, and get away from this. So I'm very good at doing that. Back then, I think I was much more sort of, oh, it won't leave me alone. It's sort of following me around. But I think once the first book or two had come out, and I started going to games days and getting a response from readers, that in itself was a reward, because there are certain key moments in the series, the obvious ones that a lot of people have reacted to very emotionally, but also other ones that for whatever reason I've reacted to emotionally, where it's had a traumatic effect on me. I'm notorious for killing characters off, but I don't like doing it. Dad? I do it because that's the dramatic thing that happens in the story, and I'm never happy when it happens, but I'm happy that the story has done something. And they're war stories. I wanted to show that actually, you know, sort of even good people don't just walk away, they're not sort of magically bulletproof. So that's the sort of lottery of this story that I think is the truest reflection of what Warhammer 40k is about. In fact, in many respects, the Gaunt and the Ghosts are sort of surprisingly liberal and sane people to exist in the Warhammer universe. And I suppose that's why we find them relatable. And that relatability also is translated out, because I've discovered, to my utter surprise fairly early on, that the series is both read and really enjoyed by an enormous number of servicemen around the world, active or retired or whatever.
Yeah.
It gets shipped out to EXs around the world, so conventions, I would meet people, and they would say incredibly complimentary things to me, like, "Are you a veteran, or have you served?" And I went, "I haven't." They go, it really captures the spirit of what it's like to be in a group of people in that sort of conditions, and that flattery, because I do a lot of book research. I do a lot of research, and now I start talking to people and learn about their experiences, not to copy their experiences, but copy the texture of their experiences. You know, when they talk about the camaraderie and the things that they rely on, and the way that, as you say, ridiculous, humorous things happen, and it somehow alleviates the horror of it. And I think that you know, why would a serviceman, say in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever, read a Gaunt's Ghost book when, you know? I think I never understood it. It's like it's made up stuff. It's science fiction. It's nonsense, and you're doing the equivalent thing for real, and that's completely real. And they've often said that it shows. I think to them, they see enough of their own lives in it, their own experiences in it, to feel reassured. Yet it also offers a sort of accelerated heroism because of what Warhammer's like. You know, these are noble people, there's the bravery, and eventually we'll win the day, and all that kind of stuff, which is more optimistic. I don't know, it's a weird dynamic, and no one's completely explained it to me. I'm just delighted. I think the greatest compliment that I've ever been paid on the books is when people who've actually experienced the real world equivalent of the same thing have said, "That's great, that's exactly what it's like." And I've gone, wow, really? Really?
Well, I obviously it really, I always complain because it's too much. It puts me too much in that reality. You know, I need to watch something terrible, or cuddle my teddy, or, you know, something fluffy afterwards. But that's the power of it. And even as I'm thinking, Mira, it's it's a laser chainsword, doesn't exist, this is all right. But it does take you to that place. And I was just worrying about you and your emotions. So I'm pleased.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some respects the actual act of writing exists there. Bear in mind, I've got this ridiculous imagination, apparently, that will come up with these things anyway. The fact that I can spend my day sort of cathartically getting it out of my system and putting it on paper so it's somebody else's problem sort of helps me decompress before I even get there. But what you're saying is the idea that you enjoy the books, but you literally need to step away. I take as an enormous compliment. There is you won't have got to it yet, so no spoilers. People at home may know what I'm talking about, but there is a death. I think it's in a book or two's time that is notorious. It is absolutely notorious for the whole of, not because of its goriness, but it's the shock factor.
Have you done something to Milo?
I'm not going to say who I've done something to, but everybody, it's become now a joke that people at conventions say, "Why did you kill character?" And notoriously one of the first times that I experienced this was after the book was published, and I was attacked by a fan at a signing.
Wow.
There was a long signing queue. Everybody was reading the new book, and there was this guy in the queue, and I could see him. He was on his own, and he seemed quite agitated. And I thought, well, never mind, that's fine. And he got to me, and he asked me if this character was genuinely dead, and I said, did it seem like they were dead? And he went, yes, they did. And he swung for me, and he was restrained for security. He calmed down, and immediately he freaked out. It had become too much for him. And I sat and talked to him for quite a long time, and I said, and he just said, it just they mean so much to me, these characters, that I had this incredibly strong reaction to it. And I thought, in a kind of bizarre way, that is a huge compliment.
I mean, this
the idea of engagement.
Yeah, dare I say it? I mean, this is the mark of a good writer. Like, if to turn me onto some books like this where I cannot stop reading them, even though, I think that it is compelling, and I'm not surprised that people are swinging at you all over the place. I don't recommend it. You're much more fun to just talk to. But,
yes.
So we talked a little bit about Sharp, and obviously Sharp is Sean Bean. So you and I had this conversation last time about, who would play. So I really couldn't think who, in my head, Gaunt took on completely in my head. I have the vision of who it is, and I cannot match it to anybody from Hollywood. But say, for example, you were being optioned, as looks like Warhammer is on the brink of being. It might be going mainstream. I've heard Henry Cavill sniffing around.
Yes, Henry. Oh, yes, Henry.
So
Lovely Henry.
Lovely Henry. Who would be your Gaunt? I know sometimes.
Well, actually, I have to say that's really difficult. I actually do, in both comics and novels, I often sort of mentally cast characters. Not as it were, and sometimes I do it for the sake of an artist to work from. Like, this character should look a little bit like this actor or this actress or whatever. Yeah. I virtually never do it as it were literally. I don't want a likeness, because that's completely wrong. That's not how you go about being creativity. But sometimes I cast the characters in my head just to keep tabs on them. Particularly, there's a lot going on. I go, oh yeah, he's the guy. What would that actor do? Oh, okay, I've got that character again. It's a way of anchoring it. So some of them are definitely cast in my mind, but not in a way that could translate onto screen. Some of them are started as the most unlikely characters, and it's like, if I said to who they actors 20 plus years ago that you're going on, for some reason that reminds me of that, no longer valid. Gaunt is a really interesting one though, because I did sort of cast him, and yet who I would cast as Gaunt has changed a dozen times in the course of it, because I think, like you, my mental image of him as a person is a real one. He is not anybody. He's not any particular actor. He is a very particular presence. And therefore it makes it difficult to. So very early on, just visually, I thought, well, he looks a little bit like very young Lee Marvin or someone like that, from these war films. And then I think there was a point in the sort of early noughties where there was an actor called Goran Visnich who was in ER, who was dark, so he'd need to be blonde. But I thought, oh yes, he's got the kind of set. And then later on, I thought, maybe Timothy Olyphant, because Timothy Olyphant's got that long, rangy build and that kind of stuff. So there's all sorts of people I'm going, they would be good, but none of them quite are inevitably are quite that. There are certain times where people say, oh, we're going to cast such and such, and you go, oh, that's great, that's spot on, that's so close that there's no difference. But I think when you've spent 16 novels or whatever exploring a character, there comes a point where you go, we could cast it well, but actually Gaunt isn't isn't a character on paper to me anymore. Obviously, he is this real living breathing person who exists just out of eyeshot, and therefore no one will quite match that. It's a weird thing. If I tell you, for instance, by comparison, the character of Val, who you won't have seen much of in those first 3 novels, but he's the sort of cheeky sergeant character who's always sort of pulling a fast one and that kind of stuff. Val, early on, I decided was Kevin Bacon. This is Kevin Bacon of 20 plus years ago. And I don't think that character, Flashdance Kevin Bacon.
Flashdance. What is it called?
Footloose Kevin
Footloose
Bacon.
Kevin Bacon. Yay!
He is not. Val is not Kevin Bacon really anymore, although it still kind of works. But I don't know why I use that as an anchor, because he doesn't, in the books, you don't read it and go, oh, he's just like Kevin Bacon. It's not like that, but it was just, these are kind of mental tools that a writer uses just to stabilize things. Which is why I find it so ironic, because obviously, having a strong connection to the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Guardians of the Galaxy session with Kevin Bacon looks like I put it in there because I know what I do. And it's got nothing to do with that.
Congratulations, by the way, on Guardians of the Galaxy. I went to watch the latest film and I just thought, Dan, look at your children. Because
I'm so pleased with it. I'm so pleased with it.
You picked the team, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you're always putting together, be it Eisenhorn or Gaunt, you're picking this crew, throwing them into outer space, and then I'm sat down my Cineplex. I think I went to an Everyman and had an upper class experience. But yeah, congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
One of my things is there are so many characters with so many names. So obviously this is probably, I dread it if you said, I just pick a book and I put a pin in, but how do you draw all of these characters from the ether, especially when some of them are going to be, particularly hated, or some of them are just going to appear almost to die to kind of show a corruption somewhere or how evil someone is?
There are all sorts of different ways. What I would say, first of all, with just talking about Gaunt's Ghost particularly, or the same thing applies to other novels when there are a series of novels. First of all, I work out the naming conventions, so what their names have got to be like. So with the Gaunt's Ghost, particularly with the Tanith originally, they've got to have names that are structurally of a particular type. Once we get past, and again, no spoilers, but once we get past that, and there is sort of we shift into people from different planets. There are very different personality and naming convention types that I need to stick to as the series goes on. So you almost like you can tell a Tanith from their name and their attitude and that kind of stuff.
Just quickly, can I cul-de-sac in here? Because a lot of people in my videos were saying the Tanith are Irish, the Tanith are Scottish. They've clearly got bagpipes. So there's very Celtic kind of culture in the blue tattoos. Yes. Have you ever kind of said, it's Scotland or
no, absolutely, it's absolutely not Scotland, it's absolutely not Ireland, it's also absolutely not Wales or Cornwall or any of the other or Brittany or any of those places, but it is all of those things, because it is sort of, in the year 40,000, it is sort of some kind of Celtic derived society, and that is the important thing. It has the essence of those things without actually sort of saying it is specifically that, as so many things in Warhammer does. I just wanted that feeling of that kind of as you say, Scottish or Irish, the Uilleann pipes, that kind of stuff, that kind of feeling to it. Something again that has a bearing on some of the later stories where that sort of cultural development sort of goes. But so the names with the mooks and that kind of stuff, all come out of that naming convention. I fairly early on I started to assemble a kind of a list that I've updated every novel since, where I write down the names of every single character and any distinguishing features and anything about those characters, and then obviously cross them off when they get killed off and update it. And every time there is a rearrangement of the regiment and squads move and I move people around, I have to shift the list around and then I add all this sort of stuff. So it grows and grows and grows just to keep tabs on it. Having said that, in 16 novels, I do make mistakes occasionally. So again, you will encounter them later on. But there are, I think, 3 or possibly 4 significant mistakes I've made with characters where I've done something and then forgotten I've done it, and then later on done something else that seems to contradict it. And each time I've identified it by the time it's in print, unfortunately. And instead of gone, oh, we'll just revise the next edition or do something about that, I have owned the mistake and turned it into a character beat. So quite often a character will first appear as a name, and then if he survives, we'll do something, and you go, oh, that's the guy who did that. So next time we meet him, what do we know about him? Do we learn his first name? Do we learn something about him? Has he got a particular hobby or a particular talent or something like that? And then the character begins to grow and grow and grow, and then you start to get these interesting characters. And that's where the way the huge cast has risen. You know, sort of very minor characters by book 6 or 7 have become part of the main cast because their prominence is written. But yeah, fixing problems. The simplest example, again, I won't give you a spoiler, but there was a character who'd been a minor character, one of the scouts in quite a few of the novels, and then he dies.
Okay.
In fact, I think he dies in Necropolis.
Okay.
He actually dies in Necropolis. He falls from a great height in Necropolis, and because he wasn't a major character, for some reason I'd forgotten that note, and then I don't know if it's the next book or the one after that, but I just put his name in as one of the people who was around. Then he was carrying on like that. And somebody said, I thought he died in Necropolis. That kind of oh shit, he did. So I then almost over. I thought, well, how do I do that? Do I pretend it's I can't. There's all the obvious fixes I can't do. I don't want to go back and revise. I don't want to be that revisionist person. Yeah. So I just I kind of promoted him to the front rank, gave him a first name, and so, although it's not used regularly speaking, I admitted in the text that his nickname was Lucky because he had survived this ridiculous fall and had been seriously injured and recovered from that. And it's not, don't make a big thing of that, but then actually the fact that he survived gives him this reputation amongst the scouts where he sort of becomes second to McCall in terms of his toughness as a scout because he had this ridiculous survival. And now he's one of the main cast. And he's really cool, and I love the character. But he came out of that mistake. And there are 2 or 3 other things like that where I've done something and I've gone, I thought, damn it, I'd forgotten I killed him, or I'd said something that sounds like he's dead. What can I do? And as a result, I've created a really interesting character who has become a very prominent character for several novels and that kind of stuff. So
amazing.
Yeah, they sort of take you where they want to go. There is an instance in the books you are yet to read where one of probably the most famously villainous character in the entire series appears. Okay. And without spoiler, the thing about that, it was the book that I famously lost. I was almost finished a Gaunt manuscript and finished writing the book. I was on deadline and my computer crashed and took the whole thing with it. And I hadn't backed up. And my editor said, can you just rewrite it? Because there was no spare copy. Can you just rewrite it? Because we've got to get to the printers. And I went, oh, for goodness sake. So I sat down and as fast as I possibly could in the space of about a month, rewrote the whole book from memory and then added the end, which I hadn't finished. And the weird thing is, it's one of the best books because rather than it being a rush, it was almost like I'd done a dress rehearsal. So I could come back to it and sort of, without subconsciously, I could fix little plot problems. But I was also writing it in such a blind fury to get it done that it was almost like automatic writing. It was on autopilot, just writing this book. And this character, who then becomes a significant villain, just walked in off the street. He wasn't in the original version. And he just crops up on the pages. And I was sort of writing, going, where have you come from? Who are you?
Who let
he was
you
fully
in?
Formed. I did not invent him. He came fully formed in the story and he just stayed. He refused to leave. And I went, all right, then. So I wrote around him and incorporated him. And then he becomes this incredibly important and divisive figure in the series from that point on. And it was like, I don't know how that happened, but that happened because of an imaginative workaround to a problem. And that's where a lot of it comes from.
That is the magic. That's like the muse coming to visit you.
It is. I have. Yes. So let's not digress into my thoughts on sort of spiritual inspiration and the library angel and all sorts of those things.
We'll do another video.
We'll have to do that as a whole thing on its own. Yeah.
Spiritual inspiration, muses, whether the emperor or the warp is feeding you.
Yeah.
You can vote below. We should thank you for that. Firstly, I love that you're not a revisionist and you own it because wow, what a burst of creativity. As someone who I do revise, but I mad respect and thank you for holding fast there. Thank you also for this amazing database because we get a payoff in First and Only. Haldane pops up.
Yes, we do.
No, from Eisenhorn. So
yes.
So this is not, we're not talking about a one Excel sheet. This must be a database.
Well, a lot of it, it isn't nowadays. I mean, each novel gets its own notebook and I cross-refer and I've got databases online. And obviously I've got a copy of it here. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I have penned for Black Library, the Sabbat Worlds guidebook, which is this enormous encyclopedia that I actually wrote with all the maps and all the character studies. and all the insanity, which is a revised version of what I did years ago, which I now refer to because it's the best place to go and look for my own. It's got the Sabbath World map and everything, but it's just a ridiculous process. But yes, that kind of cross-referencing and Easter egging my own other novels, as if they all take place not only in the Warhammer universe but in the Dannyverse corner of it.
The Dannyverse.
The Dannyverse, that's what it's called. There are, I mean, for instance, I don't know when it's revealed, but you will learn that Gaunt reads for pleasure and very much enjoys the works of Ravenel. Like at some point, his books get referenced. But the weird thing about Haldane, that one is a particular favourite of mine. Haldane appeared in Gaunt first, because First Only was written before Eisenhorn.
Yes. Holy
so
shit.
Although it's later in the continuity, I deliberately took a character that we knew from the, as it were, the end of his life, and I put him in Eisenhorn for the lols, as a younger point in his career, because obviously the Eisenhorn books are set earlier, and that was a very deliberate piece of, oh, what the hell, I'll just do that. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed his appearance, and you've obviously got it in the right order chronologically. It was not written in the right order.
Yeah, it's so mad the way that Ian set me on this path, and then meeting you get all the benefits and the Easter eggs. It's such, you know, nowadays, like, it's such a lovely gift for authors to do that, because the intertextuality and weaving this stuff in, they're like the little payoffs, and it makes the world so much more real. I don't know why I'm telling you this. You're the
well, no, it does. The problem with something like Warhammer, which is with something we always have to bear in mind, is the Warhammer universe is so vast, and the stories are set. Obviously, a lot of them are set, as it were, contemporary, but they span sort of 10,000 plus years. The danger of doing that kind of Easter egging or cross-referencing is that you make the universe seem too small. It's like, how can everybody know each other? How can this character turn up? Oh, that's very convenient, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Even though it's still a vast area of space, I do it a little in for instance, in the Gaunt books and the Sabbath Worlds books, or the Eisenhorn books, which are meant to take place not that far away in a neighbouring sector. Yeah. Because I figure, well, this is a smaller corner of space.
Yeah.
I can do it within the context of that, and then sometimes reach back. But I mean, I try to moderate the amount I do it, because I don't want to diminish the scale of the universe. By the same token, it gives me pleasure, and it seems to give readers pleasure. They go, wait a minute, I know that name. What's that? How's that related to? So that happens from time to time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And it means everything to me, so don't stop doing it. This is one of those very rubbish questions that you probably get at Q&As at cons. Do you have a favorite ghost?
Yes. Well, I have too many favorite ghosts, and I like.
Okay,
I
top
have
three.
ghosts.
Top three.
Top three. I think my all-time favorite has got to be Rawn.
Oh, yeah. He's such a bastard.
He's such a bastard. He also, like Gaunt, has the greatest evolution in the novels. So he's a character that becomes something quite special. And I like the fact that he becomes a special character without too many bells and whistles. He's not got a gimmick that you anchor yourself to. I mean, I like Larkin, is a fantastic character, but he's the sniper, and he's the one who hallucinates and all that kind of stuff. And you go, well, that's kind of easy to like that character, because he's got obvious sort of handles to grip and go, I understand that character. Rawn is just quite an interesting, complex character. He gets more and more complex as time goes by, and he's got extraordinary levels of heroism, and also, but is so ruthless. And so sort of
he's cool as fuck as well.
He's cool as fuck, but he also makes really, really easily and holds them. So he's a real favourite. And there are many others. I mean, Bragg is I'm thinking about the ones you meet early on. And there are often peripheral characters who you meet in the course of a book like Necropolis, where there are so many characters who aren't necessarily ghosts, but they're in the novels, that I'm incredibly fond of. So yes, it's very difficult, and there are some that I won't mention now. But once the novels get into the second arc, we introduce some characters there that they are just perennial favourites of mine, because they sort of join the crew and they fit in seamlessly, but they bring something that wasn't there before, and that's fun. But yeah, Rawn is probably my all-time favourite, closely followed, I guess, by McColl as the other complete badass scout. Although people really seem to love McVenna, who's the kind of really silent, no one knows what's going on there scout, who has sort of now got a mythology of his own. So there's all sorts of things to balance out.
Well, I think I obviously, because I see myself as an innocent, a unicorn for the sacrifice in this world. I love Milo the best, and
Yes.
I loved that you gave him a glimpse of like he basically is seen as a witch, right? And
Yes,
has
yeah.
powers. Yet, even though Gaunt is a very straight character for the Emperor, he's willing to protect. And I
Yes.
felt, for me, I know you're saying there's much more evolution, but I liked that he'd come in as this, like, you know, very, you know, by the book, and but he's actually going to protect his men, even if they
Yes.
are a little bit heretical. So I really loved that.
I think that's an ongoing thread that we see more of in terms of Gaunt himself, because as far as characters go, including Eisenhorn as the other big hero, they should be incredible disciplinarians, and Gaunt really should be, because he is from the Prefectus. You know, he is the guy who executes people for coughing at the wrong moment. That kind of, you know, he should be ultra strict. I think one of the things people say, oh, he's too easy on him. He's not a real commissar because look, he sort of likes them too much. And I think no, what I'm trying to show in his evolution is that he is the most extraordinarily gifted commanding officer, because he commands respect and he will fight at the front with everybody else, but he also knows what to let go because it's valuable to the morale, to the regiment, and also to the achievement of the orders that they're given and that kind of stuff. And so I think that is one of those examples where weirdly, with Milo in that story, Gaunt is almost behaving like Eisenhorn would, where he's going, this is against the rules, but I can see a good reason for it, you know. And I think that's it. And I think with Eisenhorn, it comes from a much more sort of Machiavellian idea about, you know, a greater good, whereas with Gaunt it's simply humanity. It's like, I can't do this to you, so I will look after you. He's a nicer guy.
Yeah, Gaunt's decisions around that seem more mindful and strategic, whereas with Eisenhorn he's like a wild card, sometimes using it as a tool, sometimes being used, and the greater good thing. So yeah. I love the nuance. I want to, and we're still on First and Only, but I want to just do a couple more things on First and Only. One of my favorite things about this is one of my favorite things you've ever written. Okay. Gartle felt anger rise. I am chief medical officer here. No one performs any procedure in this infirmary without the hooded figure flicked its arm. Galen Gartle suddenly found himself staring at his booted toes. It took the rest of his life for him to realize that something was wrong. Only when his headless body fell onto the deck next to him, he realized that his head cut. Bastard. No. So you had me reading in real time as someone's and I was like, what the hell's going on? And then my head was on the floor looking at her. And I was just like, Daniel Abnett.
Oh dear.
So I just thought that was wonderful. Then the second thing that I loved in this book, right at the end, they find the STC can create robots, and they talk about the Men of Iron. So I've heard this alluded to in so many universes, but this is the first book, I think, where it's like laid down. There was like a civilization. They switched over to, they relied on robots, and that was their downfall. And I was just reading this as, you know, you and I are writers. I'm hearing all this stuff about AI being much better at writing than we will be.
Yes.
So I really love that you got to kind of, I don't know if you've written about it before, but canonize that is what happened. And these fables of that civilization going down was because of the Skynet effect, right?
Yes, essentially. It all references back, I suppose, to the dark age of technology and stuff that's part of the lore. And it's interesting because that is I was both drawing upon things that had been sketched into the background, and also stuff that has since then become really fundamental parts of the background, although they're very seldom touched upon. And I think nowadays Games Workshop will go, oh, you can't do that because that's admitting too much. Back then, in the sort of Wild West of the early days of the Black Library, I went, can I do this? And they went, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. And I did it. And it is now regarded as quite a significant inclusion of a sort of an admission of that history, even though it's not quite clear exactly what that was. So, but yes, I think you're absolutely on the right lines there. It's meant to be both mysterious but also ominous about the idea of how did we end up with that? That's terrible.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to shift on to Ghostmaker. Once again, Dan, you're too interesting. So what's the latest I can take with you tonight?
Oh, I'm sure we could go for another 15 minutes. I'm sure we could do that if that's all right with you.
Okay, so Ghostmaker, literally take us, firstly, it's like lovely vignettes. So almost like, you know, a kind of documentary movie that then takes, we go from ice moons to deserts to rainforests. You take us across galaxies. Like, do you have a favorite terrain that you're most comfortable to write in?
I don't. One of the things I was doing there, and I've since done in almost every Gaunt book, is I've gone, well, they're all going to be stories about infantry combat. So my God, I'm going to have to vary things, shake things up to make sure that it just doesn't become too samey. So I try and find different locations, or at the very least different types of infantry-related combat. So small squad groups or mass battlefield, or, you know, so let's go to an ice world. Let's do it in the jungle. Let's do some mountain climbing. I think there's a parachute drop in one of them. All sorts of things like that, just so it's like, oh, it's those guys again. They're going to do exactly the same things we've always seen them do. I think as a writer, if you're making a mistake, if you let your environment become too much of a character that determines the story, however, you absolutely should allow it to be present there, absolutely determining how these people are going to survive. So you know, I just like the idea of, you know, how they're going to cope in a different environment. What are the sort of things that we're going to see them and see them do. And some of them I've revisited, because there are some environments I think, oh, we can do more with that. So let's find another world like that and do something with it, and play around with it. So yes, but that was a deliberate urge for variety there, so it didn't all feel the same.
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's especially you use the environment to kill in different ways as well.
Yes.
My friend actually gave me a really long list of everybody killed and had. So I'm scrolling for quite a while here, but there were a couple that I just thought were absolutely incredible in, like, you know, kind of a jungle forested area. Someone's windpipe was cut by a sharp leaf in a storm.
Yes.
There was a poisonous cactus that reacts to sound.
There is, yes.
And that's so of the environment, but also, you know, someone would take that and make a horror franchise. You throw that in. Oh, we'll have a killer cactus, shall we? So I really wanted to shout out about that. Also, a very spiritual, moving moment in this, where Rawn attends to Gaunt's wounds, and the dynamic is so charged. So this antagonistic relationship, he's sewing up a wound very close, a thigh wound, and then cuts the suture with his teeth. And I was thinking, sure, you could have used your bayonet, Gaunt. You know, you've definitely got another sharp object with you.
Yes, it certainly has.
I thought. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yes. I mean, that again, that none of that is planned, but the relationship between Gaunt and Rawn is sort of the central axis on which everything turns, because basically Rawn is the epitome of the Tanith. So if he can get the loyalty and as it were, friendship of Rawn, then he's got them.
I'm going to say love, because I just thought, well, there's something here. Like, maybe, you know, it's because I want some tenderness. But I did Google Rawn and Gaunt.
Oh, I'm sure there's an awful lot going on there.
And it made me renounce the Emperor. I've said that joke before. But there is a shipping around those two characters.
I'm not surprised.
Which just goes to show. But, you know, I can see how, you know, there's that definite balance. You know, it's that Spike and Buffy kind of thing, you know, on another level. But I really, really love the nuances of their relationship. So I am excited to be drawn in and see more. And I love the fact in this book, you realize Gaunt is good. He's going to sacrifice maybe what he should be doing to protect his troops. And, you know, he's going to go out of his way to protect Milo from being caught. And it's, you know, almost it's very Captain Kirk. He's going to go back and collect Spock, even though, you know, there's a whole spaceship to think about. So I really loved that. Okay, so that's just whizzed through. And of course, we get Lilith back in Ghostmaker as well.
We do, yes.
And secret elves at the end.
Secret elves. That's what I wish they were called.
So yeah, I really love that. And I really loved the vignettes. Sorry, this is turning into a bit of a fan video, but it put me in a way of like almost kitchen sink. It took us so close in. It was like almost like a Ken Loach, little things happening, little incidences, and I can feel, the bonds and it becoming so real.
Well, that's great. And I'm glad you said that, because actually of all the books, Ghostmaker is probably the one that gets the least love, because although people appreciate it and learn about the characters in it, I think everybody can tell that it's kind of, it is a fix up, and it's moving on the way to somewhere that everybody really seems to like. So I like that you like it so much. And it's also it's the one Gaunt book where I think there is the greatest variety of sort of Xenos and alien hazards. That it actually, otherwise the Sabbath World Crusade is very, very, very much about the Chaos Forces, and it's like, but all sorts of things crop up in there, and you're going, oh, there's other things going on here. So
yeah, I love it, and I think it feels very art film to me. So yeah, that's why I was like, oh my god. And then this is the big one. This is the one that when everyone lost their shit, when they were like, Necropolis, that's the one. So the ghosts don't even arrive till page 60 or so.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's just absolutely like Private Ryan intensity. And the refugees get out, and then they shut the gates, and then they're all dying outside. So by the time the ghosts arrive, you're like, thank you. And then the ghosts arrive, and they're cast into this maelstrom of like evil bankers and officers working against them, people willingly trying to sabotage them. And this parallel now with the nobility and the people who are supposed to be looking after us actually going out of their way to completely destroy us. Whew, it was really powerful. And I was reading it over the bank holiday weekend, and it just I guess the immensity of as well, because you've shown me that you've got maps and everything. So as I'm reading the book, and I know where everything's happening,
You do, yes.
So how did that feel writing it? Because not only is it incredibly claustrophobic, they're fighting over this one hive, but also, the millions of people that you're kind of, writing and controlling. Like, what was that?
I really, really enjoyed that. It was the novel I went into where I for the first time in the series, having like written novels, obviously I planned them, but I'm going, oh, that's working quite well. With that, I had this very clear view in mind, which is I love the idea, and I've done it several times in very different ways. I've done it several times in other books, including once more in the Gaunt series, but in a very different way. Of the idea of like, this is just going to be one location. It's going to be essentially, we're under siege. We're stuck inside here. It's all the dynamics that happen within that, where the threat is on the outside. Happens again in Only in Death in a completely different way. But I love that dynamic, and I thought, let's have all that. Hive is an extraordinary and huge place. Let's get all that dynamic. We can put the scale up through the roof. We could do all sorts of big things with it, and we can create all these different things. So I love the idea of having one location where we're following multiple storylines that are all happening at the same time, and they begin to cross over, and some of them don't cross over, and some of them are separate. One of the things which I think is implied, I think it's actually stated at the end of the novel, but isn't really very much of a spoiler, is as a result of Necropolis, they induct some of the Ghost-type scratch companies into the Ghosts, and they become Ghosts as well. From the next book on, the regiment's grown in size again, but some of them are from Vervenhive. So the characters you've seen there, like Captain Dower and Tona Creed and Dolkalair, they are all characters who are now Gaunt's ghosts, and that's where the cast begins to increase, and you go, these are really. Oh, and the Doctor Anna Kurth, she goes with them well. So you get this increasing. So actually, some of the time spent not on the ghosts is actually sneakily setting up characters who will be ghosts down the line, which I think is a cunning thing, and it allowed me to do two things with the regiment, which I think were really crucially important. It allowed the idea that they could at various stages have essentially draftees and recruits add to them, not just to keep up the numbers, but to keep up the cast of characters, and that they could come from different worlds, because that happens again later on in a different way, in a really interesting way. It also, because the Vervenhivers are very much, everyone's fighting, so you get male and female soldiers in the scratch companies and stuff like that. From that point on, the regiment is a mixed regiment, which is very much on the sort of, I suppose, Soviet Russian model and or modern army model, and that was a real breakthrough, because if anything, there had been a complete lack of significant female characters in the Warhammer universe, let alone in my The idea is going, we can have female troopers, we can have female, and they'll be strong and important characters, and that's given it a whole new range of dynamics and great characters that that has sustained it ever since, which I think is really good.
It is really good, and I think after reading everything, and you're so worried towards as the book thins, you're thinking, who's going to make it, who and how are they going to make it?
Yes.
The fact that I got at the end this feeling of it's going to be okay because the ghosts can be replenished, and it's these people that you've seen being little diamonds throughout. So that made me really happy, and of course really, really happy to see female characters, and also the female characters who were taking no shit when
yes,
like, oh, there's ladies in the room, and they were like, we'll just show you, and they were cool as
yes.
well.
I wanted that kind of introduction of characters. I think it particularly given that there is unfortunately resistance to that sort of thing in certain quarters, is that it should be an organic part of the story as it would be in life, rather than some kind of sense of it being forced upon a story.
Right.
And I think that works really, really well, because as far as I'm concerned, you don't bat an eyelid when it happens, because it's absolutely natural for it to happen. And I have to say that in so many different ways, at so many different levels, things that happen in Necropolis have huge knock-on effects and echoes down through the novels after that. So sort of many novels later, there'll suddenly be consequences of something that happened in Necropolis, or something that relates back to Verve and Hive, or this kind of stuff. And I think that's nice. That was the point at which I went, wait a minute, I'm not only creating a cast of characters and putting them through the ringer and telling a saga about them, but I'm beginning to really create a local environment and a continuity which I can start referencing back to.
Yeah.
And there are significance. So some of the place names become recurrent, and that's when the idea of doing like a guidebook to the Crusade and mapping it properly really came out, because I was going, I've mentioned that place 6 times, I better work out where it is in relation to this world, and and all those sorts of things. And that's where it started to grow from, and that's where there was a sense of solidity to the Sabbath worlds as well.
So I guess after all this, I'm going to have to read some more Gaunt's Ghost books. I'm going to look at all the stuff. But
yes, I can thoroughly recommend it, and there are many to go, and there are many high. In fact, I'm glad Necropolis is still thought of so favourably. But I think if you like Necropolis, there are highlights to come that sort of are even brighter. Every novel's got something to recommend it, but there are certain novels that have either got infamous incidents, or they are themselves like sort of regarded as even by me, I'm going, I was really proud of that book. That was a really, really good book, because everything came together in it. And then there are the tangential novels, Double Eagle, which is the air combat story, which ties into because it's set in the Sabbath worlds. Titanicus, which is the Titans story, which is also set in the Sabbath worlds, and that kind of stuff. So there are novels that don't feature Gaunt and the Ghosts, but are set in the same campaign, and there is a sort of cross reference to it. So there's one of the pilots in Double Eagle meets Gaunt in the 4th Gaunt book, and then we see what happens to her later. So it ripples outwards from that, and you get to see types of war in theatres that the Ghosts would never participate in because they're infantrymen. And it's like, well, let's not have that. Let's just do a book without them and go over here and see what's happening here, which I think is a fun thing to do.
Well, as usual, I will take advice from you and Arbiter Ian on my next journal. My next entries into the universe, and I think the thing is, I try and do all my questions, but I think you and I are both excitable together. So I don't think that's a bad thing, but
no.
I eventually, one day I'll have you at a convention for a 3-hour panel or something. And
yeah. Just go through all the questions until there's nothing left. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, if you do read some more and you want to have another conversation, and go through and berate me for the things that I do in the next sequence of books, because believe me, you're gonna. I'm more than happy to do that. And next time we will just say, right, we're just going to be talking for 2 hours. That's fine. We'll know it up front, and we'll just do the whole thing like that. So that I'm more than happy to do that. And really, 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 really do not assault me after. It's which one is it? No, it's Guns of Tanith. Guns of Tanith. You will be coming at me with a knife.
The day I assault you is the day I'm entering the Golden Demon, and I've got my own Warhammer army. But let's do our Aquila for the video to finish you correctly.
Absolutely, the Emperor protects.
Thank you so much. The Emperor protect. Thank you, Dan.
My pleasure. Absolute delight to talk to you as usual. So I hope I've given you some reasonable answers and not waffled too much.
You have. Thank you. Hello, I'm wearing a t-shirt made by my friend Martin McCoy. It's very cool, and you can get it from his Etsy. So I'll put a link to that down below. Hope you enjoyed.
In the name of Tanith and memories of our planet, fighting to the death because God told us so. Reeling from the warfire, someone come and inspire.